Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Day 104 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russian forces fired on Lysychansk and Severodonetsk in the Luhansk region. Russia is continuing to blackmail the world by blocking the export of Ukrainian grain, deepening the food crisis. Currently, the Russian army occupies 20% of Ukraine's territory and the front lines extend to over 1,000 kilometers. Russian troops are trying to take complete control of Severodonetsk and want to block the Ukrainian forces in Lysychansk. In addition, they continue fighting in the border regions to the northeast of Kharkiv and rebuilding a destroyed railway bridge there. Our heroes hold their positions in Severodonetsk. There are fierce street fights going on there. Lysychansk, Słowiansk, Bakhmut, Świętokrzysk, Avdiivka, Korochove and other places where Russian shelling continues are the hottest spots today. Russian troops want to transfer additional forces to the Donbass, but the Donbass is holding tight. I am grateful to everyone who resists the enormous pressure of the occupiers and defends our country. The Russians began to withdraw their units from Melitopol and Vasilivka towards Kherson. On the other hand, training on organised conduct of activities related to the transition from peace to war have started in the armed forces of Belarus. In the area of Orlen and Polessia, in the north of Ukraine, the threat of missile and air attacks from the territory of Belarus persists. Even if the soldiers have been training for a long time on the training ground, only the artillery fire shows whether they will be fit for combat. A soldier must be motivated, he must be brave, he must be trained and secured, but a well-dressed and well-fed, unmotivated soldier is not a soldier. Russia began to hand over to Ukraine the bodies of the soldiers who died in Mariupol while defending the Azovstal steelworks. Identification of people based on DNA tests is already carried out in Kiev. Since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, Russia has lost over 31,000 soldiers, over 3,400 armoured combat vehicles, 212 aircraft, and 125 cruise missiles. There is still a threat to the nuclear power plant in the Russian-occupied Enogodra near Zaporizhia. As Rafael Grossi pointed out, at the request of Kiev, the International Atomic Energy Agency plans to send an international mission of experts there. We are developing ways to send such a mission. Other factors should not prevent this internationally important audit from being performed. There are security standards that may apply in conflict situations, but no security standards under the title war. In turn, the Ukrainian state-owned company Energoatom said that it had not asked for help from the Atomic Energy Agency. We consider this message from the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency as another attempt to legitimize the actions of the occupiers. It was the Russians who disconnected the Ukrainian links with the server. It is known that almost 100 people on the agency's board are Russians, and even Mr. Gross's deputy is a citizen of the Russian Federation. Mr. Gross's previous visits did not bring any solutions. Meanwhile, Russia is blackmailing the world by blocking the export of Ukrainian grain far beyond Ukraine, primarily to Africa.
Russian forces have captured some of Ukraine's most productive farmland. They planted explosives throughout the fields. They've destroyed vital agricultural infrastructure. There are credible reports, including, as we saw in one of our leading newspapers today, that Russia is pilfering Ukraine's grain exports, to sell for its own profit. Now, Russia is hoarding its food exports as well. So this is all deliberate. We know that. President Putin is stopping food from being shipped and aggressively using his propaganda machine to deflect or distort responsibility because it hopes it'll get the world to give in to him and end the sanctions. In other words, quite simply put, it's blackmail.
During the United Nations Security Council meeting, the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, cited reports that Russian troops were using rape of civilians as a weapon. He also accused Russia of using food supplies as a weapon, blocking Ukrainian ports and causing a global food crisis.
A few weeks ago, in Odessa, millions of tons of grain and wheat stuck in containers and ships because of Russian warships in the Black Sea and because of Russia's attack on transport infrastructure. And it is Russian tanks, Russian bombs and mines that are preventing Ukraine from planting and harvesting. The Kremlin is also targeting grain storages and stealing grain in Ukraine while shifting the blame on others. This is cowardly, this is propaganda, pure and simple propaganda.
After these words, the Russian ambassador, Vasily Nebenzia, left the room. Michel added that it was the Russian style, not to hear the truth. This morning, in front of the entrance gate to the main production plant of PKN Orlen in Płotsk, a 41-year-old man attacked a security guard with a knife. Police reported that the man was irrational and said that he was getting the job done. Preliminary findings show that he is suffering from mental illness. He was brought to the district prosecutor's office in Płotsk. During the attacker was heard to shout out that he was seeking to prevent Orlen's merger with the Gdansk-based Lotos oil company. He also claimed to be a Special Forces soldier and to be following orders. A 41-year-old attacked a security guard, attacked him with a knife, and was incapacitated by security guards immediately after the incident. The attacker was then arrested by the police. A security officer on the Płotsk company was taken to hospital. According to the doctors, his condition was uncomfortable but stable, and the district prosecutor's office in Płotsk started collecting evidence. This event was recorded by surveillance cameras, whose monitoring has been secured and will be inspected. The employee of Orlen Security who was attacked today is in a stable condition, and his life is not in danger. We provided him with the necessary care. His heroic attitude allowed him to avoid the worst. The hate campaign can lead to a tragedy. According to the findings of the prosecutor's office so far, the man received mental treatment. Breathalyzer test did not show alcohol in the exhaled air, but blood was collected to check, among others, for the presence of chemicals. For several months, politicians of the Civic Platform have been conducting a media campaign against the merger of Orlen with Lotos, which will result in the creation of the largest economic entity in Central and Eastern Europe. The most fierce criticism is met by the management of the state-owned company for selling some of the petrol stations to the Hungarian company MOL, which was a requirement imposed by the European Union. Opposition politicians have repeatedly raised the unfounded accusation that part of the shares in the Hungarian company were to belong to Russian entities. Last week, the narrative was taken up by the Civic Platform chairman himself, Donald Tusk, visiting Orlen petrol stations. This is one of the 400 and more stations that the Law and Justice government has decided to sell to the Hungarian MOL company, so in a political sense, almost to Putin. It must be said very clearly to the opposition politicians, remember, stop sipping venom, stop giving false information to the public about the merger of Orlen with Lotos. The escalation of tension, causing unrest and creating artificial social divisions by irresponsible behaviour of politicians, is reminiscent of the situation in 2010, when an attacker armed with firearms broke into the office of Law and Justice MP in Łódź, killing Marek Rosiak on the spot. According to the witnesses at the time, the perpetrator, Ryszard Siba, shouted that he wanted to kill Jarosław Kaczynski. We have the example of Mr. Siba, a local PO activist, then expelled. Later, we had hate sessions against the defenders of the cross in the Krakow suburbs. Donald Tusk uses phrases such as cleaning Poland of dirt. Earlier, Grzegorz Schettner spoke about the locusts from Law and Justice. These are phrases straight from Hitler's periodicals. In the afternoon, the perpetrator was brought to the district prosecutor's office in Płotsk for further action. United States warship USS Gravely, a guided missile destroyer, docked in the Baltic seaport in the city of Gdynia in northern Poland today, in what was described by officials as a show of support for the country as war rages in neighbouring Ukraine.
Right now, our primary roles is to work the interoperability with the other NATO allies and the partner nations in the Baltic through exercises, sailing events, and then also to help maintain the regional stability as our primary goal.
Putin hates that. Putin hates us working together, and we have never been more, quite frankly, working together like we are now. There is nothing accidental about a destroyer from the U.S. Navy being in the port of Gdynia. I assure you of that. It's meant to send a clear message to the people of Poland that we stand with you, that you are safe and that you are secure. As President Biden said, the U.S. and NATO will defend every square inch of NATO territory.
Poland has played a key role in providing military and humanitarian support for Ukraine since Russia launched its invasion on the 24th of February. United Nations data shows that 5.03 million had fled Ukraine as of April. More than half of the refugees have entered the European Union through Poland, where many had family and other connections, living in the region's largest pre-war Ukrainian community.
Poland is a frontline state to the crisis in Ukraine. We are protecting on this flank the transatlantic community against what President Putin has unleashed in a homicidal, brutal way in Ukraine.
The ship is currently touring the Baltics and docked in Lithuania last April. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.